Temp check. What kind of summer are we having this year? A family road trip summer? A beach bum summer? Or a wake me up when the sun sets summer? With Instacart, choose your own adventure and skip the shopping side quests. Where available, you can get ice cream delivered to your hotel, sunscreen to the pool, or cold brew to your bed. Well, door, in as fast as 30 minutes. Wherever you find yourself this summer, you can get the goods. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
Each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, we're so excited. Our guest is Mary Laws, creator, showrunner, and writer for Hulu's new series, Monsterland. She's also written for various films and TV shows such as The Neon Demon and Preacher. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
We're so excited
to have you. Monsterland might be one of my favorite series of 2020, so it's really exciting to talk to you about it.
Oh, man, that means a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but before we go into that, how did you get into horror?
How did I get into horror? My doorbell just rang. Did you hear that? That's classic horror timing. How did I get into horror? Ding dong.
You're like, oh no.
This is how I actually got into horror, physically. So I started as a playwright, and I was in playwriting school. I was in drama school when I was hired to write a horror feature film called The Neon Demon. I had never thought about writing horror before, and I'd also really never thought about writing film or television before, to be totally honest. I was really engrossed in the theater world. And so, I was getting out of grad school and I was so poor. I was just totally broke. And
I feel that as someone who just graduated from grad school.
Oh, where did you go, Mary Beth?
University of Chicago. I went to
fantastic.
Film studies and gender studies. But boy, oh boy.
Broke.
Broke.
Yeah, I got like a really, really small scholarship. Not scholarship, like a prize. I won like a small award when I was graduating from grad school. And it was like just enough money to rent a storage unit so I could put all my stuff in storage and then drive to Los Angeles to write this movie that I just got hired to write.
Wow.
I had never thought about it, about writing for horror before, but I really loved the director of the movie. He's a guy named Nick Refn, and I'm not a cinephile at all. I've really been educating myself on the job over the last 5 years that I've been fortunate enough to make a career out of writing film and television. But I did know his movie called Bronson, which it's so good. It's really fantastic. I think a lot of people know Nick Refn because of the movie Drive, which it was a little bit like I think just more people saw that movie, but Bronson is a slightly deeper cut for Nick. And I think it's just so fantastic. It's really like a visceral movie. And it was a movie, and we probably will talk about this because we're going to talk about If These Walls Could Talk later. But like, I really love things that make you feel in your body when you're watching it. And Bronson did that for me. And so I was like asked to write this film with this director that I loved his movie, and I was like, sure, whatever. I'm totally broke. This is, a foray into something that I don't know anything about, which I always love. I love challenging myself. I love just diving into the deep end and kind of seeing what happens. And as it turned out, I really loved it. I came out to LA and started working with Nick. We wrote a bunch of drafts, and then very quickly also shot the film all within sort of like one continuous year. Wow. And by the end, I was just hooked. He really, I'll credit him with introducing me to a lot of horror, and also just cinema in general. Like, he is a person, his father was an editor, and he comes from like, a great family of filmmakers and really has a love for the craft. And, I think that I could sense his addiction and became sort of addicted myself. And then just decided to unpack my storage unit that I could barely afford with my like $100, $200 prize money, and then move everything over to LA and try to hack it as a screenwriter.
Wow.
That's so cool. I mean, casually getting to help write the Neon Demon, like writing the Neon Demon out of grad school though, like that's pretty awesome.
It's a really unusual track, and I feel really, really fortunate because a lot of my like sort of beating down doors and like working for cheap and getting people coffee and all the things that you do to like try and get in happened before graduate school. I did a lot of that in New York, trying to kind of like beat down the door into the theater world. I interned at the theater, and I just did all of the sort of like day job crawling on the floor, like begging for crumbs, trying to get into a room, trying to be a part of it. And so the story, I guess it feels like it all happened very quickly for me, but there had been a lot of sort of clawing my way into the profession before that. Oh, yeah. But it is a very strange way of sort of a foray into Hollywood, because it wasn't really something I was looking for. It came to me rather than the other way around. But I feel so fortunate because in many ways it's a much better fit for me than theater ever was.
Cool. That's so cool to like realize that and like kind of get to live that dream. That's so amazing.
Thanks.
So, okay, I know you said you didn't really watch a lot of horror growing up, or you weren't really a big cinephile, but what were some of the first horror movies? Do you ever remember watching a horror movie when you were younger that wasn't the movie we're talking about today?
I was younger. What did I watch when I was younger? I mean, I've always been, I don't know about a horror movie I watched when I was younger. I've always been scared of strange things, though. Like, I was really, really, really scared of, The Never-Ending Story when I was young. And I was also really, really, the one that really terrified me the most, it was also a book, was called Tuck Everlasting.
Oh my God. Yes, I know Tuck Everlasting.
I mean, shout out to Sissy Spacek, who I think was in Tuck Everlasting and also in If These Walls Could Talk. But Sissy Spacek, really, anything she's in terrifies me. I was scared of strange things when I was a kid. Like, I wasn't really ever scared of like blood and guts and stuff like that. And I certainly, wasn't, I was into witches and, I didn't mind any of the sort of like dark magic, 666, none of that terrified me. But it was really like, Tuck Everlasting, like the idea of living forever was one of the scariest things that I could think of as a child. I think a lot of kids my age I remember them being scared of dying, but I was not. I would run to death with open arms. The idea of like being, even as a child, I just knew, oh my God, it is so hard. Life is so hard. And it is beautiful and wonderful and all of the things too, but also just like, can you imagine doing this forever? Fuck no, get me out of here. Like, I'm gonna plane to whatever the afterlife is. Like, so Tuck Everlasting really scared me. Never-Ending Story, certainly. But I wasn't scared easily. I've never been scared easily. I think that that's also part of what I'm really well suited, or the genre is really well suited for me, rather, because I'm not afraid of going to the dark pockets of my imagination or anyone else's. I think that that's really fun rather than, terrifying.
I know that you said that you've been kind of exploring the horror genre now as an adult a lot more. Are there any movies that you've seen recently that have like really jumped out at you that you really liked? Like
Us and Get Out, I think are some like spectacular horror that's happening now. I feel like I'm really drawn to horror that's about something rather than just like cheap thrills and jump scares. Mm-hmm. Although I do find myself returning over and over again to like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, like Toby Hooper.
It's so good.
It's so good, and it's also so just like the little engine that could, because they had like a roll of Scotch tape and a dream, and they made that movie. Exactly. It's just so spectacular. And I love the underdog. I love the indie movie that made it big. I love anything that's like just so true to itself also that it's undeniable. And, one of our writers, Scott Kosar, who worked on Monsterland, he worked on the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And so I have to certainly applaud anything that tries to like remake classic like that.
Oh, yeah.
But it just feels like, it's an undeniable original piece of horror cinema. And, it's hard to remake the classics, but I go back to that over and over again. And I think also, he's a problematic person, but I think Roman Polanski's early stuff is some of my favorite horror.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. I think Repulsion is probably the one that I would say in my current writing life, whenever I start anything, I think about Repulsion, at least some point when I'm writing, because I think it's so spectacular. There's nothing like it. It's not a 3-act movie. It's its own structured beast, and it's so internal. The visual language of that movie does such a brilliant job of defining what is happening to her internally. The score and the cinematography, it all works together. Like, it's just absolute magic. And so I think about it always. I think about also the sort of like rope-a-dope that movie does, which, you're not exactly sure what you're watching the whole time you're watching. And I remember the first time I was watching and I was like, oh my God, is she having a psychotic break? Which, you could probably argue, yes, she is. Is this all inside of her head? Is this all metaphor? What is it doing? And then you see that photograph at the very, very end of the film with her and her father, and you sort of, for me, everyone has a different interpretation of that film, I think, but for me, my interpretation is that something really dark happened in her childhood, some trauma, and suddenly it's like everything that you were watching makes sense. And I was just like, oh my God. I remember just jumping up the first time I watched it and immediately rewatching it and thinking like, this is a masterpiece. This is something to return to over and over again.
I was thinking back to when you were talking about Tuck Everlasting. I was wondering, have you seen The Hunger?
No, I haven't.
Because that is a movie about like a vampire that is like ageless and she lives forever, and she gets playthings that, and one of them is of course David Bowie. And but the problem is that like when she changes them, like they age slowly, but at some point they stop the slow process and they accelerate age, but they still live.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's like an existential dread of like never dying and like the repercussions of the fact that you might never die, but you're still going to grow old and start falling apart.
Yes, absolutely. Existential dread. I mean, that's what scares me. Also that movie, Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn, they die.
Death Becomes Her.
Death Becomes Her. That scared me as a child as well. And it's my very good friend Dustin loves that movie and cites it as being one of his favorites, and will watch it over and over again. And I must return to that one as an adult also. Good. But yeah, when I was a kid, I couldn't watch it because I couldn't bear the idea of
I'll tell you, gay men love that movie. It
My
is
friend
like,
Dustin is a gay man, so that tracks.
we love that movie. It is like high camp, and it's two badass bitches going at each other. I mean, hello.
Amazing. That's all you need.
That is all you need. I mean, come on.
It's true. So, Mary, can you tell our listeners a little bit about Monsterland? Just like an overview of what the series is.
Sure, I'd love to. Monsterland is an 8-part anthology series, now streaming on Hulu. Each episode is its sort of own self-contained little monster story with one, generally speaking, one protagonist at the heart who is wrestling with some kind of demon or trauma, who is in a pothole in their life and encounters with various monsters of all variety, sort of lift the veil and awaken, enlighten, and change the course of their lives. Each episode is set in a different city, somewhere in the contiguous United States, set in what was meant to be present day United States. It looks a little different than our current world and our current moment, although some of the themes definitely we are still sort of yelling and screaming and fighting about. But
yes,
yeah, that's Monsterland, and it's adapted from and inspired by Nathan Ballingrudd's absolutely beautiful book, North American Lake Monsters.
Oh my gosh. So I love Nathan Ballinrudd. I love his short story collection, Wounds.
Yeah.
And I love North American Lake Monsters. And so I wanted to just talk to you about like how you were introduced to his work and like what inspired you to take these stories and adapt them and gain inspiration from them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like you, Mary Beth. Like I read the book, and I didn't even read the whole book. If I'm being honest, I read the whole book. I didn't read the whole book before I decided to do it. I've read the book many times. I was in a meeting at Annapurna Pictures, who is our studio on Monsterland, and it was like kind of a general meeting. You know, you like sit down and you talk to a producer and you tell them what kinds of projects you're working on, what kinds of projects you'd like to work on. And they say, we have all of these books. Do you want to adapt any of them, et cetera, et cetera. And this was a book that Annapurna had already owned the rights to. They had been working with a filmmaker, Babak Anvari, who he adapted Wounds.
Yeah.
And so he had a relationship with Nathan and had read this book of stories and brought it to Annapurna and said, maybe this could be something. I don't know. And I just saw it sitting on the table, literally. It was just there. They weren't pitching me the book or anything. I just saw it there, and I liked the blurb. I had just gone away to, I had just gotten back from a solo trip where I had rented a cabin and just gone for a month by myself and just like read and sort of tried to shake off the perils of Hollywood.
That sounds amazing.
It was really amazing.
That sounds phenomenal.
Truly fantastic. Can't recommend traveling alone more. I think it's an experience that everyone should have at some point in their young or single lives or married lives. I'm with a partner and I still travel alone. But anyway, I digress. I saw the book sitting on the table, and it said Raymond Carver meets horror or something like that. And I had just read everything Raymond Carver had ever written. He's the absolute master. And I was like, what is this book? I need it in my life. And she was like, oh, maybe you would be interested in that. This director, Babak Anvari, is attached. And I just loved Babak's work. I particularly loved this short that Babak had made called 2 and 2, which I think you can find on YouTube. It's one of the best shorts I've ever seen, and it does such a wonderful job of bringing this sort of like the sort of metaphor to life. I took the book home and I read the first story, and which ended up being our pilot episode. And I didn't read anymore. I just called my agent and I was like, this is going to be my next project. I just thought if the other stories are half as good as this first one is, then it's going to be a spectacular read. It'll be a spectacular series. I devoured it shortly thereafter. And I mean, you know, as a Hollywood writer, you're just constantly being sent material to adapt. And it's usually not good. Like I think that part of the skill of writing in Hollywood is actually seeing IP and trying to see into it and see what the potential is that maybe isn't already there on the page. And I find it very rare that you get to work with source material that is as absolutely astonishingly beautiful as Nathan's work is. It's a real true luxury. And then on top of that, Nathan himself is an astonishingly beautiful person, which...
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it should come as no surprise. Like, you read a story like his, where he puts so much love and so much empathy onto the page and into all the characters, and then you meet him in real life, and he is exactly that man. He has so much love and so much empathy for everyone around him, and he's a single dad, and he's just a really good-hearted person all
That's
around.
good to hear.
And I feel very fortunate to have become quite good friends with him, and also very fortunate that he was really involved in the process in the initial stages. He came out and he sat in the writer's room with us for about 2 weeks and helped us work on how we were going to adapt the stories that we were going to adapt, and come up with the stories that were going to be original content. And so really got to play a hand, or play a part, have a hand in the genesis of the whole thing, which was really exciting for all of us.
And so that leads kind of to the next question I had was, how did you choose which stories to sort of directly adapt versus original content?
The idea was to make a series that could be ongoing.
Okay, yeah.
Which I don't know if it will end up being or not. I think that there are a lot of, questions about whether I have another season inside of me and whether Hulu has another season inside of them. But that was the original idea. And so I wanted all the stories to feel as in the moment as possible, of the moment, so that each season of the show could really speak to the current climate specifically in our country, but also in the world, but specifically in the United States. And so in looking at the book, I hired 4 really wonderful writers to come on board with me, and we were just we just talked about what spoke to us and what felt the most relevant in terms of what the world was going through at the time, what we were going through at the time. And so the ones that we chose them for various reasons. We chose them because they felt important. I mean, I hate issue pieces, but they were kind of issue pieces in ways, but also important conversations about human grief or human emotion, or we just had a heart for them. I think in particular, like I said, that first story really spoke to me in sort of a real, visceral, but very personal way. And I just, that had to be a part of the series for me. It felt like a character that I hadn't really, the young character of Tony felt like someone I hadn't seen on the screen enough, but it felt like a woman that I could relate to in a number of different capacities. And so, I mean, it was really just a conversation. And again, we were really lucky to have Nathan be a part of that conversation. And he was so generous, not precious at all about what stories we were going to adapt or not adapt, or what we were going to draw inspiration from, how we were going to adapt them. He was so flexible and so generous that we were really able to kind of look at the whole season and say, what works best.
And I think you guys did a really good job capturing his energy, regardless of if it was an adaptation of a story or not, with that whole monstrosity has different faces, and monstrosity, an actual monster that you'd think of, isn't the same as what it actually could be, especially now. And you definitely capture that energy of his stories really well.
Great.
Throughout the entire series.
That's great to hear. Good.
What a cast. I mean, your cast for this show is just fucking stacked.
They're
to be
pretty fly, yeah.
I didn't know what to expect because unlike Mary Beth, I have not really read much of his work outside of Wounds, and I absolutely want to devour his book now when I am done with festival coverage.
Yeah, and good news for you. I think he just finished writing another one, and I think it should be out sometime early next year or something like that.
Awesome.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited.
Plug, go look up Nathan Ballingrud and check out his next book.
The first episode, I didn't know exactly what to expect when I started watching this series. And the first episode, is it Fortune? Fortune. Yeah. Louisiana, just like, it knocked me on my ass. I was not expecting it to be as like authentically dour, I guess, and like exploring really real issues. And it was the first I watched, and I was like, oh, I see what the series is going to do now, because you have this guy that appears to be the monster, and it sort of like plays with your expectations of that story in really interesting ways. And I thought the ending was just incredibly a brave thing that I don't ever really see in movies in general, to be honest, or television for that matter.
I mean, I think that's kind of what you're talking about is really like the beauty of the book, which is that it presents you with these sort of classic monsters that have been a part of the genre for centuries, and then juxtaposes that with these protagonists who are behaving quite monstrously themselves. And I think it leaves you to wonder who is the most monstrous. And that was definitely a question at the heart of the series for us, is, you know, or something that I hope that viewers will walk away taking that question with them, like who was the monster in this episode? I think in the first episode you could think a lot of different things were the monster, and you could think Alex was the monster, or this sort of like mysterious off-screen figure, Mr. Gray, or maybe even Tony herself. And that was a really exciting thing that I think Nathan's book was bringing to the surface, that we really wanted to make the heart of the series.
And I will say the final episode, Newark, New Jersey, that was my favorite story in the book. And also I unfortunately just suffered a family loss of a kid. And
I'm so sorry.
I was sobbing in a good way. Like, it wasn't similar. It was very different circumstances, obviously, than that episode. But I was so excited to watch it because I knew it was based on my favorite story. And just, wow, like it just was so good and so sad. And I think what that kind of ties to what I love about the show in general is like, you guys aren't afraid to be sad and heavy. Like, you're not like trying to cater to like scary and being like typical horror. I love that it's like very kind of like internal horror, and there's scary monsters, but it's much more introspective, I think.
Yeah.
Which I like a lot, and it's different.
It is different. I think that early Polanski is doing that. It's definitely terrifying, but I think it also sort of taps into like the human experience. And there are times, like take Rosemary's Baby, for instance, there are whole stretches of that film that you forget you're in a horror movie at all, because it grounds you in life. And I think that, you know, I don't know, I'm so sorry for your loss too, Mary Beth.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm just moving past it, and we don't have to talk about it because this is obviously your podcast. But that's really, really terrible, and I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
But I think like as a woman and as a gay person, and as someone who grew up in the South, which is not all bad. I won't stereotype the South. I really loved a lot of my experiences growing up in Texas, but I think that that's the way I have experienced the world from time to time, as like my everyday living is, horror could step in front of me at any moment. You know, I was walking down the street in Silver Lake, Los Angeles the other day, the like bluest, most left community that I've ever lived in, and someone screamed at my girlfriend and I out of the like sort of window of a pickup truck some slur, and you know, like that's like I know it's a crazy Silver Lake of all places, but like that's sort of my experience of the world is, not just because of my gayness, but for any number of reasons, like something could step out of the shadows and harm you. And I think that that's partly why I'm drawn to that early Polanski. That's why I was drawn to Nathan's book. That's why I wanted to make this series that isn't afraid of like what's real and what's raw, the real grief, the sorrow, and also the everydayness of life that sort of like anchors you in a real world, but then the monsters come, and that just feels very authentic to me.
I wanted to talk about Plainfield, Illinois, which I think is one of the best episodes of television in 2020.
Yeah.
So I know that Emily Kazmarek wrote the episode.
She did.
So I was just, this episode punched me in the face in a good way. I was recently, I'm sorry, I'm getting very personal with this.
That's fine. I love it.
I'm so sorry.
I'm really here for it. I mean, it's your podcast, so whatever you want to do, but I will get as real and as personal as you want.
So I was recently diagnosed as bipolar. And so watching this, my bipolar disorder isn't as severe. Like, it's not bipolar 1, but Taylor Schilling's character was like every anxiety I've ever had about being in a relationship. And like, I've never seen that kind of honesty in a relationship about mental illness ever. I feel like bipolar disorder is always seen as like scary and always like you're insane or like you can't control yourself. And it's just like, this
or like it's so fun when you have manic episodes. It's so quirky and it's so cute. Yeah, ha ha ha.
You're so fun at the parties when you're manic. It's like, thanks a lot. But this episode for so many reasons, but I think the core with the way that you looked at mental illness and how it affects not just the person, but the partner, it like broke my heart in an amazing way. And first, I know that Emily Kazmarek really wrote the episode, so thank you to her, but also I know that you probably worked on that episode, and thank you, I guess. Like, what was like approaching this episode with Emily and creating this episode and making it, I know it's an adaptation of the Good Husband. That's right. And so, but you made it something so queer. Thank you. And amazing. So how did you guys approach this episode?
Well, if I'm being really honest, I was really scared to adapt this story.
Okay.
I have mental health issues myself. I have close family. I have a brother who has been diagnosed with bipolar or maybe misdiagnosed, uncertain. I have a cousin who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and actually did end up taking his life when I was a young kid. It felt very personal to me, but also it felt like something I was really scared to do wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe because it is so personal to me, but also because I think it's something that touches every American home in some way. And I was just nervous.
Yeah.
But the writers, all of them, Emily included, were really, Emily most of all, were really so in love with the story and felt so connected to it, and really encouraged me to make it a part of to make it one of our 8. And I think without that sort of push, I'm not sure I would have done it, if I'm being really honest.
Yeah.
But they convinced me. They won. 4 against 1, so unfair. But they won. And then the more we dug into it, the more I realized why the fact that I did feel like it touched every American home in some way, why that makes it an important story to tell. And I think when we got even onto set, into production, it was the 4th episode we ended up shooting. I think that's correct. The 4th episode, and the whole crew also felt extremely connected to the material, I think, and came forward with their own stories about their personal struggles or their family struggles or their struggles as a partner to someone who has struggles. And so it just ended up being so personal. And I think that like it was a really great reminder to me from my writers. Thank you so much for that. The scariest things are usually the things worth doing.
Yeah.
And I think that when we were breaking the episode in the room and and then Emily's beautiful script, and then taking it into production and having our actors really, and our wonderful director, Logan Kibbins, just really like grab hold of the reins. It just, because it was so personal to everyone, it just came more and more to life in such an authentic and special way.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Logan pulls such great performances out of both leads.
Oh yeah, no, truly. I mean, Logan is such an amazing visual director. She just has an eye, and we also had the most incredible cinematographer on this episode, Anka Malatenska, who was the DP on 4 of the episodes. And I think this was the second one that she had shot, and I feel like when she came to this material, she also started taking more risks with her own work. And everyone just felt really, and I think this comes a lot from Logan. Everyone felt really comfortable to like explore. There was an ease on the set. And also, it was just all gay women on the set.
Hell yeah.
I'm gay.
Oh my God.
Emily's gay. Logan's gay. Roberto is gay. One of our producers was gay. Everyone. It was just like, I was
amazing.
like on set one day and I just was like, oh my God, everywhere I turn, there's a lesbian. It was
like, that is amazing.
Heaven. It's heaven. That's what my heaven looks like.
Like, how often does that happen at this point?
Never.
In film? Like,
it never
never.
happens. Unless it's like the L word, it never happens. And I just think, and the fact that we aren't an exclusively queer show, which gives me even more of a sense of pride, to be totally honest with you. Like, I mean, like, I'm queer and I'm at the head, so of course I'm making a lot of queer decisions, but like, I think that like we're a more mainstream horror show, and having it not be like so niche, and have all those lesbians on set. I mean, that's a real, I feel a lot of pride for that. And I also just feel like, that is something that when I was working on television shows that weren't my own, I wasn't seeing. And I think that as younger and younger people are starting to come to be able to run their own show, I think they're making different kinds of decisions. And so I have great hope that Hollywood will continue to trend in that direction, and that you won't get pigeonholed. That if you're a gay writer, you go work on the gay show, or if you're a woman, you work on the chick show. And like, that drives me fucking nuts. It drives me insane. Yep. And I just feel like I want my sets, and I want my shows to look like my world, and my world is not just straight and white, Yeah.
So. Yeah. Well, and I love that. I loved having like the lesbian couple at the center, and it was normal. Like, I feel like every time there's a lesbian couple in something, it's like, they're lesbians, guys.
Yeah. They're They're gay. They're doing it, y'all.
We have to do an issue about homophobia and that kind of stuff, right? Like,
also, it's like, I was actually talking to Emily the other day, and I just was like, where are all of the lesbian rom-coms? It's like every lesbian romance is set in like the 1800s, and they don't get to be together. Yeah. They like have sex once and then one of them dies. or like they have to like, take a boat back to England. And I'm just like, fuck that. Like, where are our modern day, lesbian romances? Like, even, Call Me By Your Name, which I thought was, oh my God, such a beautiful gay love story. It was still like where's our female version of that? Like, we get like blue is the warmest color, and then like goodbye, a kiss and a goodbye. Like, we need more, and more exactly what you're saying. And this is something that Emily is always, hyping as well. Just like, we need more queer stories that aren't just about them being queer.
Exactly. And like, seeing lesbian couples who have been married for a long time and like have a child in a house. Like, I feel like a lot of it's like a woman discovering her lesbian identity with another lesbian, and like it's like all awkward. Yes. But like, a lot of people have lived as a lesbian couple for a while, and so I like showing that like they are married, they have a life, like it's pretty much like any other person's like suburban life.
Yes, it wasn't about the discovery of their gayness or the problem of it either.
No, and I think that's like so crucial, and especially because you're adapting the work from The Good Husband that was supposed to be like obviously like a cis straight story, and I'm like love that you made it gay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, I have to give Emily some credit for that, but like you know, she was just like, I think it will be. I think that it could have more complexities. And there were scenes that we had, you know, talked about adding that were sort of about, not about their gayness, but sort of like, leaning a little bit more into the complications of sort of, a gay partnership and like hospital politics and, you know, and stuff like that. And ended up choosing not to include those in the episode at the end of the day because it was stronger without it, didn't need it, or et cetera, et cetera. But like, I think, it's a great exercise, especially in adaptation, just making them gay and just letting the two characters live as a queer couple, because oftentimes like the story will still hold water. And so why not, you know?
Yeah. Wow. I love that. On that note, Mary, what movie did you bring with you today for us to talk about?
Oh my God. Today I brought the terrifying, the horrifying, If These Walls Could Talk.
Okay, If These Walls Could Talk is terrifying, but not in the way that you think.
HBO is proud to present Demi Moore, Sissy Spacek, and Cher. If the choices were easy.
If you get this abortion, you are not going to be able to live with yourself. Could you help me? Get out my door! This situation is completely... Oh, that's Dr. Thompson. She's a tough lady. This is hard. I know it is. It's very hard.
If the options were clear.
I'm pregnant. Oh.
What are you saying is the alternative?
No!
Having kids is part of married life.
I just thought I was done doing it, that's all. You can get one at any health clinic. What are you talking about? I saw you, Mom. Reading about abortions.
If the risks weren't so great.
Oh, Becky, I'm pregnant. I'm so sorry. You have to have this baby somewhere else. I can't have this baby. You just can't do it.
It's illegal to terminate a pregnancy.
But you don't understand. I really need to get this done.
Do you want to do this or not?
Demi Moore, Sissy Spacek, Cher. The times keep changing. The emotions remain the same. If These Walls Could Talk.
For those of you unfamiliar, If These Walls Could Talk is a trilogy of stories set in the same house, but with different occupants, and they examine abortion throughout different eras in 1952, 1974, and 1996.
So, my first question that I gotta know is, how old were you when you saw this movie
Far
for the first
too
time?
young.
Because I cannot imagine seeing this movie as a young woman or like even a young girl, depending on how old you were. I cannot imagine seeing this movie.
I mean, and I didn't see the whole movie. I ended up getting to the scene that scared me most, which I think was what you guys were asking for, the scene that scared me, and I turned it off. And I have not, until recently, actually watched the whole thing, although in full disclosure, I did not watch the last, 15 minutes because I ran out of time. But the last
15 minutes are fucking nuts.
Are they? Oh my God. I'll watch it immediately after we get off of this podcast record. But I had never seen the movie past the first part of the triptych, which is the Demi Moore section of the film. But I don't know how old I was. I was telling my girlfriend Heather earlier, I was like, I feel like I was 11 or something. I was definitely way too young. Wow. And it was one of those things where can you hear my dog snoring also? Is she a part of it?
No, but I love that.
She's really sweet snoring in the background. It was one of those things where Blockbuster Video was still a thing.
Oh,
and,
yes.
My mom would take my brother and I, and we would just get to each pick 2 movies or something like that. And I don't know. I guess I liked Demi Moore. There were 3 women on the cover of the movie. It looked interesting. Maybe I'd seen a trailer. I just picked it. And I think my parents didn't do a lot of censoring what we watched when I was young. I think maybe I also would self-censor a lot. I'd be like, oh no, this is rated R. Can't watch this one. Somehow this one just like slipped through the cracks, and I watched it by myself, sort of sitting.
Oh, jeez.
Like, crisscross applesauce on the carpet in front of the television. And I remember like my father kind of like at the kitchen table in the distance. Like I remember it so specifically what I was wearing. Even I think I was wearing overalls. Like I remember it and started watching the movie. And it's like, I mean, I'm just diving in now. Tell me.
Yes. Oh, yes.
It's just like drama. It's just a drama. And it's like it's not a like particularly, looking at it as an adult, it's not particularly well-written drama. It's quite on the nose. But, as a kid, I just was like, oh, I like Ghost. I like Demi Moore. And so I was just watching her in this like sort of 1952 drama about a nurse who is pregnant and doesn't want to be, and about 20 minutes into the movie, 15 minutes into the movie, she tries to give herself an abortion with knitting needles. And that was it. And I had just, in my like 11-year-old lifespan, had never seen something so horrifying. I mean, it's true body horror, and it's really, like the filmmakers just really lean into it, and they like she collapses on the floor and she's sort of like convulsing after she attempts this very painful looking home abortion, and they don't cut away. They linger, and they let you, like, even today, like I watched it earlier and I watched on mute because I was just like, I don't know if I can experience this again. And I left as a kid. I paused the movie and I just sat there for a minute, and I was like, I didn't even really, I mean, I was 11. I did not even really understand the full concept of abortion.
I was going to say, like, did you have any idea, like, what abortion was?
I mean, I learned pretty quick. Yeah.
You sure did.
But no, I didn't have, like, full concept. And I just sort of sat there, like, with the, VHS tape on pause, and I was sort of in like mute horror, and then I threw up. I went to the bathroom and I threw up. Wow. I felt I was so upset. I should never have seen that at such a young age. And then I was telling Heather, I was trying to remember this experience earlier when I was talking to my girlfriend about this. And I think I went and took a bath afterwards, like a warm bath, and just like sort of sat, like I just needed a comforting feeling. I was like in shock, full body shock. And I think that experience has been something I've reflected back on through the years as I have become, a creator, myself, that like, and that's again, like part of why I really love Nick Ruffins Bronson is that it gave me something close to that experience. Not that is an experience that I want young 11-year-old, 12-year-old girls to have, but for me, when something, I guess knowing that can happen to the human body when they are watching a story unfold on the screen, I'm so strangely enamored by that idea and trying to like recreate that feeling, just like that visceral full body feeling, because that's an experience, like that's a ride. That's like getting on a roller coaster. And if you could do that with a narrative story and in film and television, like, I mean, that's a huge achievement. And I think that that's also part of the beauty of storytelling, not to upset people, but just to make them feel what the characters are feeling. So anyway, lots of feelings about this movie, but I find myself coming back to this scene over and over and over again in my memory.
Holy shit. Like,
I can imagine. Okay, so you paused the movie and then you didn't watch the rest of it after the scene.
No,
correct?
and also like whenever I would go back to Blockbuster Video, I remember like walking by it on the shelf and like shuddering. Like it gave me so much trauma as a child. And today, I mean, watching it now is truly shocking.
It's truly shocking.
It's a shocking scene.
I was texting Terry. I was like, I just said, well, because like after that part, I said that part like knitting needle. What? Like I knew this movie was about abortion, but I did not like. They don't like they really show it, which I appreciate. But Jesus, I was just not expecting it.
Pull any punches at all, and I can't imagine what do you guys remember when this movie came out? I didn't even look it up.
1996 on HBO.
Okay, great. So I mean that would make me exactly 10 years old when it was coming out, because I remember seeing trailers for it, and I think that I just was like enamored with Demi Moore. I thought she was hot, to be honest. And
yes, understandable. Very understandable.
And then there she was giving herself an abortion. My crush was over.
You're like, no more. I can't look you in the eye, Demi Moore.
I mean, that would have put me. But I can't imagine what it was like as an adult seeing this in 1996. It must have been. I have to say, like, I'm not in love with the script, but I think her performance, she just doesn't even hold anything back through that entire, I mean, you have to just applaud everyone who is involved with this for doing something so risky. It doesn't totally hold up, fails in a lot of ways, but also is certainly trying to attack an issue that is so important and makes a lot of really bold choices, which like you can't ever fault anyone for that.
Yeah.
Well, and the ending of that first story is definitely like it goes there. I was surprised to see, after she gets the kind of back alley abortion, and she's just like, the next scene is her trying to call for help as she's bleeding out. I'm like, good Lord. I was not expecting that to be the ending.
And then it just ends. It's over. Like it's done. That's her story.
Roll credits. We get another story now.
Like, Jesus. Bring in Sissy Spacek, another woman I'm deeply afraid of. But I mean, it truly is. It's shocking and it's bold. And, I think this was on HBO. I think it was an HBO movie before HBO was really HBO. I mean, it was really in like sort of the early days of them becoming like the golden arches of television. And I think that they did that by taking so many risks. And I think that this film, is no shortage of risk.
I agree with that, especially because I feel like abortion, like people always like don't want to talk about it in movies and film or film and television. And I love that, like, it's very melodramatic, I think, especially at the end of the very end of the movie. But I also appreciate them being like, this is abortion. Like, this is what it is. Like, and they're not afraid to say the word abortion and show it, because I feel like not many shows or films were doing that, or really haven't. There's more recently, but still, like.
Yeah, no, they were very face forward with this film and got some incredible talent to come and be a part of it too.
Right?
Like, they were obviously putting their dollars behind this idea, putting their artists behind this idea. And I think like, I mean, I don't know, man. Not that many people really know about If These Walls Could Talk, but it stuck with me. It has stuck with me all these years because the risk that they take and how honest they are willing to be with this subject matter and how visceral the experience of watching it is, man. It's something.
And like, the one that you react, like the first story that you react to is just like the first episode of Not exactly, but like there's a very similar parallel in the first episode of Monsterland when Tony gets or attempts to have an abortion in her friend's bedroom.
Yeah.
Like, so like interesting to see, like, do you think you were kind of influenced by that, or did you?
I'm sure I was
subconsciously probably.
Yeah, I don't remember thinking about it while I was writing it, but I know that in my life as a writer, I have at many different points talked about If These Walls Could Talk and talk about that scene. So I'm sure one thing led me to the other. It's like, it's an issue, right? It's an issue, and it's in sort of like our political discourse or discourse, lack thereof, or like
whatever is happening right now,
whatever the fuck is happening right now, like it's a part of it. And I think that, you know, again, like sort of the boldness of the If These Walls Could Talk filmmakers to address this head on. You know, that scene wasn't in Monsterland, wasn't a part of Nathan's story, but it felt like Nathan's story was very much like circling around the drain of that particular, you know, issue. And I just think like, I mean, it's a part of a larger story in the pilot episode, but I think like it's something that we should be talking about. And I think that it's something that certainly as a young woman, again, growing up in the South and who was not, out of the closet for a long time, who did have a lot of relationships with men, like, you talk about getting pregnant, you talk about abortion with your friends, you think about it. It is so much a part of our reproductive life, is a part of our life as women, our daily lives. And so like, I think it's so important to be having these kinds of conversations on screen. And I feel so lucky that, you know, Hulu was willing to take a risk on a scene like that, on a conversation like that, on an episode like that, is not nice. It is hard. But those, again, just like we were saying about Plainfield, like the scariest things are the things worth doing and worth talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I will say that the second of these episodes, If These Walls Could Talk, set in 1974, I have a couple questions. The first one is, am I the only one that saw her daughter Linda as maybe queer coded?
Oh.
As a queer coded character?
I could see that.
No, I didn't, but explain. Like, show me what you were thinking.
Well, she definitely is like the feminist in training, because like she plays that kind of like almost like parental counterpoint to her mom, and talking about, you know, you don't give yourself you never give yourself the right to your own opinions, like talking about how, you know, she doesn't do that. But there was one, she spends a lot of time with her friend. I think her name is Allison. And there's one scene where Allison comes into her home and the father sees that she's wearing his plaid shirt. And he makes this comment about, why is she wearing my plaid shirt? And it just gave me like this feeling of like,
because gay girls wear plaid.
Gay girls wear plaid.
Yeah.
It's just all of those little tiny things. Just like in 1996 was their attempt at maybe like kind of queer coding their character, because when you are a queer fan of cinema, you tend in the past, you tend to see yourself in these queer coded characters. And so I'm always on the lookout for those type of things, especially in the 90s, when, you know, there was a lot of like crises affecting the queer community. I mean, this is at the time when Matthew Shepard is killed, and there's like all the talks about don't ask, don't tell in the military. So like I found that a lot of people will try to do a wink and a nod to like include that in there. And it just, for some reason, I don't know why, but I just kept coming back to that as.
I mean, I think your interpretation is totally valid. I didn't see it that way. I guess and I'm honestly, I think you might be smarter than the film, Terry. But I think I just saw it as sort of the feminist argument for women's rights, that she was a woman who would dare to suggest a woman do what she wants with her body, who would dare to suggest that an education is more important, or as important, than motherhood, or that she would dare to take her father's shirt and wear it, that she is a woman who is coming into a power, sort of a masculine power, even, I guess you could say, as this sort of decision maker of her own life and body. Yeah. And so I guess that's how I interpreted her as a character. But I love your interpretation so much.
Well, The other thing that like kind of, I guess, bothered me the most about this was the subplot with her getting her education. And she's talking to her professor.
Oh, like the scene on the stairs?
Yes. And she's like talking to her professor about like, how she wants to explore how these women had it all, and being able to like balance work and life. And then her ultimate thing is they didn't. They were all pretty fucked. And I'm like, so what are you trying to say?
I think what she's trying to say, Terry, is that you can be a mom or a professional and you have to choose one or the other.
It's a binary decision.
That was one of my problems with this film. I feel like it was all very much tragic. And I know that was the point, to be tragic, but it was just like everything is like black and white, it feels like, in this movie. And while I do appreciate the fact that the segment with Sissy Spacek talks about abortion within a married couple, I think that was really important. And I feel like not a lot of people talk about that. And like, we have too many children and like this can't happen. That kind of nuance is great. But I feel like it was very like black and white in terms of like, and like tragedy all the time and like sadness. But
yes, well, that's because abortion is only sad and motherhood is pretty sad and being a woman is also pretty sad.
You must question the rights to your body before you have an abortion. You cannot be like ready to have one. I mean, I think that as a sort of weird champion of this film, I think it's a foray into a discussion that no one in Hollywood was having. And so I just think what you're saying is totally accurate, that it is just black and white and it lacks nuance across the board in terms of both the characters and the circumstances. And I think that it's a film that thrives on melodrama as its engine. But I just, again, like have to say, thank you for even starting the conversation, right? Yeah,
to the film, because of course it wasn't going to get it right, because how could you on the first try? Like if you're trying out a new look, like you're going to have to develop the look over time. And I think the same is true for stories. It did not hit a home run, but I did at least make it to first base. And I think that is, again, just something to applaud about any piece of art or film or made for television movie, whatever you might be. I think that's just like a noble effort.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. But so we get to the third episode, and I know you said you didn't finish it, but we're going to have to talk about the ending.
We're going to have to spoil it. I'm so sorry.
No problem at all. I mean, I got through about half of it, and I certainly love Cher as both the director of the piece and as I was just introduced to Cher when I had to stop watching.
Well,
before we do get to that,
do you want me to guess how it ends?
You can probably guess how it ends.
I guess. It could be anything. Anne Hesh, another lesbian crush of mine, or me as a lesbian crush. I guess she's pregnant by her married professor. Is that right?
Craig T. Nelson,
who is scared his wife is going to find out and is sort of pushing her toward an abortion. She goes to the
literally tosses money to her.
Done. He's what an evil man. And then she goes to the abortion clinic where some people some protesters try to talk her out of it, goes inside, has some meetings, Cher is there. I mean, I don't know. Knowing the way that these walls could talk works, I'm sure it ends in some kind of tragedy.
Oh boy, does it.
Oh boy, does it.
Boy, does
oh
it.
boy, does it.
I don't know. You guys have to spoil it for me, please.
Well, before we get to that, because I want to dangle myself
I was telling you, got the carrot. All right.
So I was thinking, this movie with this episode in particular brought me back to is that, again, this was my first time watching this, but when I was growing up, there was a Catholic school, St. Mary's, on one corner, and almost like kitty corner to it was a Planned Parenthood clinic, right? And every weekend, a lot of these religious Catholic people would stand outside and sit outside the clinic. But I was thinking, in particular with the first time we see the protesters in this movie, that these are a lot different than the protesters I got to see, because we would drive by them and I was maybe, 10 or 11 at the time, and they were holding out signs of aborted fetuses. Like, they were just like showing these big giant signs to anyone driving by. And it was very, very aggressive,
to put it lightly.
And me, kind of like you talking about seeing this movie and getting to the abortion scene when you're 11 or 10 years old. Here I am, 10 or 11, not really knowing anything at all about women's anatomy or anything about really pregnancy at that point still, and driving by and seeing like these horrific signs that they're just posting up. I'm like, man, this is
not Christian.
Right, exactly. And it's quite a way to learn about pregnancy.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because that was like
no.
That was my experience with it, and it was it was crazy that thought just like came flooding back to me when she has to like maneuver her way through protesters twice to go get her abortion.
Yeah. They were a rather like watered down version of the protesters that I think we see from like Westboro Baptist or what have you. They were sort of just like gently pleading with her and giving her reasons and also offering her money.
The second time she goes to and this is probably what you didn't see. The second time she goes to the clinic, it's the rally up in front of it has like surged to epic proportions. I mean, there's like this one woman who it kind of made me laugh, like a little bit how on the nose it was. Cause she stands up and she starts shouting, "I'm here to represent the young women of this country. God forgive us for taking roles we aren't meant to have. May he break independence in women's hearts."
No.
And I'm like, good God.
No.
I know these types of women because you see them on Fox News today.
Yeah, that's terrible. So what you're saying is if These Walls Could Talk really does hold up in contemporary America.
We were going to talk about that because boy, oh boy, unfortunately, I think it still holds up.
I said to Heather, after I was rewatching it earlier, I just was like, man, humans, like, we're just always fighting the same fights. Forever and ever, we will be fighting for gender equality, for the right for women to make choices about their own bodies, for racial equality. Like, we're just always going to fight the same fights. And I felt a little discouraged, and she gently reminded me that things are better than they were in, say, 1952 during the Demi Moore section of the movie. But yeah, it really did feel very relevant and very potent, especially with these, Amy Coney Barrett hearings that are happening right now, and Roe versus Wade being threatened or talk of it being threatened. It felt very potent, the film did.
Yeah, and that was the thing that really stuck out at me as well, is in particular, I really liked the opening credits, how it presented 3 different time periods in the opening credits and newsreels of those times, showcasing the protests that were happening. And one of my favorite quote was one of the women saying, "If men could get pregnant, abortion would be sacrament."
Gloria Steinem was saying that.
Yeah, exactly, Gloria Steinem. And you see all these like throughout from the 50s, the 70s, and 1996, all of these very similar protests and trying to get equality for women. And it was a little, I could see how it would feel a little defeatist looking when that is like what you're shown for this, that nothing has changed in the 22 years in between each of these segments.
You guys have left me a little bit hanging though. How does the last one end?
I know.
What happens to my crush Anne Hesh?
So Anne Hesh goes back and she is getting, Cher, the doctor, is giving her an abortion. And there is a young couple that is also inside the clinic who are supposedly there for a counseling session. And one of them is Matthew Lillard.
I love Matthew Lillard.
3 months before Scream would come out. And he bursts into the room after the abortion is done and shoots Cher multiple times and kills her.
Oh, no.
Like, mid-abortion, like, there are tools inside of Anne Hesh.
No.
And he busts in and shoots Cher.
See, look, let us be so brave in all of our own work from here on out that all the drama happens at once. It all comes to a head in the same moment. Wow, that is not what I was expecting. And yet I imagine, with protesters, definitely. I can see how that would be the ending. I can't wait to watch it now.
But like, even with the Demi Moore, the way that one ended just like so abruptly, it literally is, he comes in, shoots the doctor, apologizes to Anne Hesh's character because he thinks that he shot her on accident and he didn't mean to, leaves, and then she cradles the doctor's body, and then it's roll credits and we're done. I'm like, good God.
It's so abrupt, and it's just like, and then they're intercutting with protests yelling, so there's like they're very much showing her getting an abortion, like, and the sounds of an abortion, which, I mean, again, hell yeah, no one ever does that, so I think that's crucial. But then intercut with the protests, and intercut with Matthew Lillard like barging in with a gun, and it's just like the drama. And I mean, like, again, applause to them for like going all in, you know what I mean? Like, they did it. They sure fucking did it. Like, applause to Cher. Let's just talk about Cher for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
The goddess herself. But can you imagine just being like, I would really love to star in this role of the abortion doctor, but also I'm going to direct this as well. And so she's, calling for alternate takes in between getting a bullet to the head. And I mean, what an amazing person. Yeah.
Seriously. It's like, so talking about this movie has given me, I think, a deeper appreciation, because I think when it was over, I was like, what the fuck? But, like, because I was so shocked, and I was like, God, like, abortion isn't this dramatic. But I am, like, talking to you, Mary, about it, I do now appreciate the fact that, like, no one was talking about this, so, like, they just went in with a bet, like, they just did everything they could to make it important, like, to make it really stand out, and that I do really appreciate, like, the thoughtfulness and kind of, like, the no sugarcoating.
Yeah, I mean, also, I guess, like, what, if it's 1996 and you want to make a film that discusses the subject of abortion, how are you going to make that film? Like, how are you going to possibly market that film and get people to come to that film with sort of like open arms? And I think that, like, packing it with both incredible movie stars and all this melodrama, I think, is really the only answer. It makes me think about, like, I mean, just not to take it back to Monsterland, but it makes me think about, like, horror as a sort of vehicle for telling stories about issues or topical stories or things that people wouldn't necessarily want to just come to on a Tuesday night, Right. But if you wrap it in like that's why Rod Serling was so brilliant as well. The original Twilight Zone was so brilliant. Like, he wanted to talk about Nazis. He fought in the war, and he came back with so much trauma and so much tragedy inside of his head that, like, he peddled I believe, like, a series about Nazis, like a very, like, sort of naturalistic drama about Nazis around, and nobody wanted to produce it. And so instead he created the Twilight Zone, which was his way of talking about some of the same themes, but again, in this sort of like horror vehicle that, like, brought people to it. And I think there's something really spectacular about horror as a genre, that it can do that. It can be like, you can be like, come ride this roller coaster ride, and right. On the way we're going to talk about something really important. I don't know how else HBO could have made a film that was sort of surrounding this issue and bringing people to this very important issue that really deserves a spotlighted moment to have this kind of discussion, without Cher and Sissy Spacek and Demi Moore, and without that like high drama, that potent melodrama. Like, that's the vehicle that I think, I imagine, brought audiences to the film. Yeah. It was also the 90s. Like, what were they even doing in the 90s? They were making crazy shit in the 90s. So I don't know. Maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but I
think that makes a lot of sense. I think they were trying to play into the sensibility of 90s film and be like, all right, if this is what people want, we're going to fucking give it to them. And like, that definitely works to its credit, like, to its advantage.
Yeah, definitely.
It surprised me how stacked I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but like how stacked the cast was, because especially in the last segment directed by Cher, it's like, oh my gosh, there's Craig T. Nelson. Oh my gosh, we have Jada Pinkett.
Yeah.
We have Matthew Lillard, who in 3 months will be doing Scream. I mean, it's like all of these people that are like either on the cusp of being, really famous, or have had a really successful career, especially in horror, like with Craig T. Nelson and Poltergeist and whatnot. And it's like they pop up and it's like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe how many cameos are in this.
Yeah.
In this,
they
this
got
movie.
that HBO money, baby.
HBO money.
They got that HBO. I mean, to this day, like HBO is, I think, the network where I mean, Apple is becoming more so also, but like where you see really, I hate the term, but like A-list movie stars, like really famous people are willing to go and work in television. Mm-hmm. And I think that like, for a television movie, it's a totally stacked cast, but they also, they spend a lot of money on their material. And I think that, that's how they've built their brand. That's why they are who they are, is by taking risks in their subject matter and by getting really amazing talent to come on board.
Yeah. So, Terry, how many surprising cameos out of 5 do you give If These Walls Could Talk?
Oh, wow. I'm not sure, honestly, because like it's a mix of I think that it's doing a really interesting job of tackling either how far, or B, not how far we've come in like the 22 years span between each of these. And I mean, looking at it now in 2020, we are 24 years removed. Like just 2 years outside of, like, they could do another segment of this movie set today, and it would be, how different would it be would be my question. So I do think that there's a lot of melodrama, and I think that because it is these 3 shorter, like 30 minute segments, that the characters are very stock and they're basically just one side of this black and white discussion. So I'm not really sure how to rate it exactly, but I think honestly, I'm leaning somewhere between 2.5 and 3.
Okay.
Surprising cameos out of 5.
It's hard to rate this movie. It's very serious, and I'm like, we don't want to make fun of it because it's really important.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's probably somewhere in between there is where I'm kind of sitting at right now. What about you, Mary Beth? So
I was leaning towards a 2.5 before this discussion, but in talking about it with both of you, I think this is definitely a solid 3 surprising cameos for me. Okay. I think I didn't appreciate as much like how brave this movie is and like what it was really doing to talk about abortion when no one really wanted to talk about it and like even say the word abortion. And the fact that it shows the process in 2 of the sequences, like that's just pretty game changing to me the more I think about it. So despite the melodrama and like the not as good script, I have to give it 3 for like just the bravery of the whole thing. Mary, what are your final thoughts on If These Walls Could Talk?
I mean, am I supposed to rate it?
Yes.
I rated like a 13 out of 5. Like
yes.
This movie.
There you go.
Hell yeah.
I mean, this movie has scarred me, stuck with me, given me something to attempt in my own work. That sort of visceral response. Even watching it today, despite all of its flaws, I have to give it applause for being bold, for showing stories about, while not very nuanced, still complicated women making difficult choices, which is really all I ever want to write, what I want to see. So yeah, man, I'm all about it. Also, we haven't even discussed that there's an If These Walls Could Talk Too.
Oh my God, that's right.
Which I've never seen, but I think, isn't it about being gay?
It is. I was laughing with Mary Beth about this because like there's a little note in the Wikipedia page about this that there was a sequel, If These Walls Could Talk Too, aired in 2000, and it says, quote unquote, the subject addressed in it was lesbianism.
Lesbianism.
Whenever someone uses that term, it almost it like makes me think of like you're talking about a cult or like a disease. This one is about the lesbianism. But yeah, that one is also kind of stacked too.
It is stacked. Ellen DeGeneres
Yes, nice.
Michelle
Very
Williams.
Nice. My favorite.
Chloe Sevigny, of course.
Amazing.
Sharon Stone.
Paul Giamatti.
Well, I love Paul Giamatti.
Like, it's and like the description of this movie is like 3 stories lesbian couples. Like, it's not even related to abortion, it's just lesbianism.
Is it? I bet it's the same structure, though, that they're all in different time periods.
Yeah, same house, 3 different eras. And directed by women. Great. I mean,
great. That's wonderful.
Yeah. But
Anne Hesh wrote some of it.
She did?
Yeah,
wow.
that's what
Anne
she's
Hesh
credited for.
really, If These Walls Could Talk really jump-started her career.
Yeah. That's
so cool. Yeah, I mean, I love this film. I think it's definitely not one of my favorite films, but it's one of those things that I just keep in my pocket and carry it around with me and think about what it did to me when I was a child and what it was attempting to do and what it did do right and what it did do wrong. But I think it's certainly a bold film worth examining.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Mary, for joining us to talk about If These Walls Could Talk. Where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up you'd like to share?
I have a lot of naps coming up.
Hell yeah.
I'm
Much
going
deserved,
on
I would say.
vacation. I have spent a great deal of time trying to get Monsterland out of the house and onto a screen near you. So check out Monsterland on Hulu. Everything is streaming now. Where can you find me? I mean, you guys found me on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram. That's about it for me in social media. Yeah, check out Monsterland. And thank you guys so much for reaching out and for having me. It was really, I don't typically respond to just sort of like cold requests like that, but I really loved your approach to this podcast and what you had to say. And I also just think that queer artists should support queer artists all the time. And so,
I agree 100%.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I feel very honored, and it was really lovely getting to have a chat with you guys.
Oh my gosh, it was so lovely talking to you too. So listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with If These Walls Could Talk? You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out directly to us on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, keep the conversation going by chatting with the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Steve Barnold for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. And thank you everyone for listening. Stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children. Somebody please think of the children.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.